here we are. This is Sex Love Psychedelics, and I'm your host, Dr. Kat, bringing you psychosexual conversations that will leave you intellectually turned on and hungry for more.
How are this whole conversation? I'm loving the concept of consent. This is the last piece that I really want to introduce here, because I think that can be very confusing for a lot of people. We've been taught, no means no, but then we're also trying to read body language, and we're trying to stay in a scene, and that can probably trip up a lot of people who want to keep it sexy, but also want to make sure that it's safe, or these times where things can become a little blurry or gray, and we're not quite sure what we're reading in somebody. How would you help them? What do you tell people to help navigate these gray zones as it relates to consent?
Well, I think the first thing is that you would play with, should is a tough word, but this is my personal recommendation. Yeah. If you're playing with people that would choose your well-being over their self-interest, as their sort of requirement to engage. So that's the baseline, right? That makes life a lot easier, because if you could trust that, then most things work out well. The second part is I really love Dr. Jana's model when it comes to the gray zone. So you have two sides of, one is wantedness, how bad do you really want this thing? And then the other one is your communication. How ambiguous was your communication? So is it clear? And most human decision is not exactly like a hell yes or a hell no, right? It's so many level of wantedness for various reasons. I want to get close to my partner, but I'm not really in the mood. But did I say yes, or did I say no, or did I give something completely you could totally want something and still say no. Yeah. So I think what is really beautiful about her model, I should just interview her for the audiobook as bonus content. And the way she described it is a really good internal check. Where am I on the scale of wantedness? Right. And the other one is, what did I actually communicate? Did I communicate clearly where I'm at? And sometimes you could also, before you actually make a decision, you could tell people the state of wantedness, that you're in, but you could still communicating something different. But I think the clearer the signal, the less trouble you will be in. Yeah. When you communicate very clearly about what you want and don't want. And you could also communicate and go well, I want it, but I have this concern. So you can negotiate a little bit better. So those two check. What did I actually communicate? How much do I want it?
Which is very human, because we have these different parts inside of us with different perspectives or different needs and wants, and sometimes they can be conflicting. So it makes sense why verbally wouldn't come out as congruently as our somatic body response. So here you're saying, slow down and check in with that.
Yeah, I think slowing down and checking in, because a sex could totally pause, or it could be rescheduled, right? Or it could never happen again. Yeah. But most people think if you stop to check in, you ruin sex. So I think embracing those awkward moments, those pauses, it's not like porn, it's never perfect, edited, right? So you could actually slow down and check in. And also about reading signals. So we put one responsibility on go well, did you communicate this clearly? Right? Mm-hmm. If you're on the receiving end of people's communication, if you feel like the answer is ambiguous, I think there's probably a good idea for you to check in and go did you really mean what you say? Mm-hmm. So if you are on the listening end and the answer is ambiguous, it's your responsibility to check in. Did I hear this correctly? Mm-hmm. Matters quite a bit. So, and I don't think there's one prescription that works for all. That's why there's so many different, even within Kingster, there are so many variation of all those rules and dungeon rules or whatever the case may be. Yeah. So I think human interaction is complicated, as you know, being a therapist, right? But overall, I think those are helpful if we check in with how much we want, what we actually communicate, what we actually heard. Yeah. And then care about other people's well-being before your own sexual urges and need.
That's so important, because like you were saying earlier, we need to create that safety in order for us to go up to those edges and explore. explore, or even just novelty. Again,
Yeah.
we need to feel safe in order to be able to do that. There's being in the kink community as well. There's two techniques that I had been given that I've used since, and they're amazing. One is asking the person what makes your yes a yes, so that the person pauses and gets to check in with themselves. And then the other one is, so you maintain the scene, you maintain the polarity between your topping and their bottoming, of, is that a yellow or is that a red? So that you can still stay in the scene, but it's still a check-in.
Yeah.
I've
And
loved those.
You want to increase the resolution of how clear that your communication is.
Yeah.
So when you have like more defined terms, I think it really helps people. But then the unknown is so goddamn sexy. So it's a balance.
Yeah. So make sure, you have safety with this person.
Yeah.
This person has your pleasure in the forefront.
Well, that was fun. Thanks for tuning in, lovers. And if you want to experience more ecstasy and sexual liberation, head over to sexlovepsychedelics.com and learn about how you can join me for any one of my online or live events. And while you're there, grab my free guide on sex and psychedelics. Remember, this podcast is for entertainment and educational purposes only. Please contact your healthcare provider and local law before pursuing any of the products or psychedelics discussed. And one final note here. I make this show specifically for you. If you're loving the show, then be sure to leave me a review in iTunes or Spotify to let me know. Happy to be here and happy to serve. I'll see you next time on Sex Love Psychedelics.